Do I want to first read some Bukowski, do some poetry, or do I want to do calligraphy? Ain't that the question? I'm gonna read and analyze. So we are reading from the Essential Bukowski in candlelight. And I'm going to move all this closer so that you all can see it better. It looks kind of dim right now, but once the page is open, it's not so bad. And the poem for today is called Destroying Beauty, which, if that doesn't sound like Bukowski, I don't know what does. He's so edgy. He's an edgelord. I love ginger, the warmth, the spiciness in the back of my throat. Really excellent and very healthy. So I will get my colored pens, and I will do a few reads over the poem before I do any scribbling. But this one's short, so maybe we end up doing two. Or just do this, then move on. It might be the play. Or it might take forever to analyze. A rose. Red sunlight. I take it apart in the garbage like a puzzle. The petals are as greasy as old bacon and fall like the maidens of the world, backs to the floor. And I look up at the old calendar hung from a nail and touch my wrinkled face and smile, because the secret is beyond me. Okay. Very interesting poem. A lot of things already caught my eye. It's called Destroying Beauty. Destroying Beauty. A rose, red sunlight. I take it apart in the garage like a puzzle. The petals are as greasy as old bacon and fall like the maidens of the world, backs to the floor. And I look up at the old calendar hung from a nail and touch my wrinkled face and smile, because the secret is beyond me. So, a poem about age and beauty and destroying beauty. Things that immediately stick out to me. Fall like the maidens with their backs to the floor. The old calendar, the wrinkled face, being beyond me. A rose, red sunlight. I take it apart in the garage like a puzzle. The petals are as greasy as old bacon and fall like the maidens of the world, backs to the floor. And I look up at the old calendar hung from a nail and touch my wrinkled face and smile, because the secret is beyond me. So, the phrase deflowering of a woman to take one's virginity and to sort of, well, it implies an amount of corrupting or destroying beauty, right? And in this case, he is literally taking apart a flower. The beauty of life, the beauty of youth. And he looks up at the old calendar, perhaps a reminder of time, of his age, and touches his wrinkled face, again pointing to that, and he smiles, because the secret is beyond him. My immediate interpretation is that this is referring to youth and youthfulness and beauty and perhaps color. Right. This seems straightforward to me on first sort of thought of analysis. Bukowski writing that he is old, he lacks that secret of beauty, it's beyond him. I like this because of the double meaning, both beyond me, as saying like, oh, it's beyond me, it's not something I understand. But you also might say something is physically or temporally beyond me, beyond my years. I am beyond beauty. Right? Now, it wouldn't be Bukowski if we could just appreciate the rose and the beauty. He is taking it apart, describing it as greasy as old bacon. And I wonder if this is to minimize our sort of perceived beauty, because a rose, a flower, is just beauty and passion and love and all of these things. Rose is a great symbol for all those things. Red sunlight. I presume talking about the rose as to say that it is warm and beautiful and such things, and radiant, and he takes it apart. And when he goes beyond the beauty, he finds something that is not so beautiful at all. And perhaps there's some amount of contrasting, sort of the internal, in this case tactile, beauty versus the visual and external beauty of the flower. And maybe separating those things. It is red sunlight, a visual thing. It is beautiful to the eye. Bukowski might say, like a woman. But as he takes it apart, he finds it to just be greasy petals falling, right? And falling with their backs to the floor like maidens, right? And this really speaks to like the idea of like a sexual implication of virginity. And it's Bukowski looking back on all of that. You have like Bukowski and like Love and Roses. And Bukowski looks back and he cannot understand it. It is beyond him and he is beyond it. Youth. But he smiles at that, and this I like. This I like. He smiles. I don't quite know why. So one way to think about this is maybe he sees the beauty as surface. And that the rose, sort of the physical rose underneath the image. Hi, Nashi. The physical rose underneath that image of a rose is much less beautiful. It is greasy and taken apart, deflowered. And so perhaps he smiles because he is realizing that, and maybe realizing that he can have a beauty for himself despite his wrinkled skin, despite his old age, despite his physical, the surface stuff, the alcoholism, the womanizing. But he says that maybe inside, in my art, there is beauty. There is a reflection of that visual rose. Maybe. And that would be cool. Void, yes. Welcome. I'm glad to have you, and you as well, Nashi, here in chat. I always love having people around. We are doing some candlelight Bukowski reading. How's it going? Well, how are you? I am personally doing quite excellent, reading. I already spent some time reading for myself this morning, and generally just spend some good time on myself. I spent some time reading Nabokov, and now I'm here on stream. Did I hear the songs you sent? I did listen to them. Yes. I did get those, and I appreciated them. I'm not sure. Yeah, I enjoyed them. I'm uncertain how I would go about, looking at a song on stream. I'm also just less able to dissect music right now. But they were nice. They were good. So... Okay. And what did you say? You said you are... you're alone. Well, being alone is okay, and at least on this stream you can be sort of not alone amongst some people in chat and amongst some art and some good peaceful times. We're talking about the difference of internal and external beauty in this Bukowski poem, which I think is maybe, I would like to interpret this as the first positive Bukowski poem I've read. It seems like he's older in this, and he also smiles, right? Now, Bukowski hasn't smiled in a poem yet. I wonder, though, knowing Bukowski, one other way to interpret this, is this smile genuine? Is it sort of bemused? Sort of sarcastic? He's smiling, maybe pity. You might smile with pity toward himself. And in that case, he looks at himself, an old man who couldn't find beauty, a man who only really destroys it, a man who writes poems that destroy beauty. Poems that talk about incredible musicians and makes them sad and depressing, and a poet who, unable to care for his daughter, right? So maybe he's not smiling in happiness. He smiles in pity because that secret of joy and beauty and love is beyond him. And maybe this is a resigned smile. Maybe this is giving up. Maybe this is giving up. And that would be sad. As to say, it's beyond me. I have no way anymore to make, as opposed to destroy, beauty. And wouldn't that be tragic? Wouldn't that be tragic for Bukowski? I don't know much about the circumstances of his death or the end of his career, or even when this was written in his career, but it does feel more mature. The back cover mentions his, or maybe it's in the introduction. Yeah, it mentions his dirty old man years. Right, dirty old man, macho persona in the 70s. In his final years, he takes a more philosophical stance on life. And so I do wonder if this is some of the ideas of the dirty old man, these ideas of destroying beauty and deflowering and women with their backs against the floor, described in a way that is much more philosophical and introspective. He does this in a garage, I will point out, which means at this point he has a house, provided this is true, which probably tells me he's successful in some sense or has some money, which tells me this is not the start of his career. And so this feels like later work. And I do hope that is the case, because at that point I believe that maybe it's a more positive work. Something I have been not finding much out of Bukowski. And it's funny because it's short. I think positive poems are easier to write short, or just hard to write long, maybe, because there's so many things to whine about and be cynical about. But positivity, I think, also requires simple speech. Elegance of a rose. And this is a much more elegant Bukowski poem. Even in his depictions of sexuality, they're sort of tangential, like the maidens of the world, backs to the floor. And he still has that very American, straight-talking Bukowski. Petals are as greasy as old bacon. Right. This tea is really good. I made ginger tea. It's amazing. So I like this poem, and it's funny that it has sort of been very quick to analyze in this way. I think there was something else I wanted to say, but it is also shorter. This is probably 40 words, where the previous poem, much more. Previous poem before that covered 2 pages, so I like it. The idea, though, of the beauty on the outside of the rose and the greasiness on the inside of the rose is very striking to me. And this, I sort of conceive in my mind of these rose petals slowly falling to the ground, almost drifting. Red sunlight. It's peaceful. It's peaceful even as he destroys things. And in his other poems, I think he is very violent in his destruction. But this one is not only positive, it is peaceful. And to me, this really gives like a different side, a different angle of Bukowski, which I really appreciate, and honestly is kind of catching me off guard and by surprise, because in his poem on destroying beauty, he has created something very individually beautiful, which is not something I would say he did in his prior poems. The language is not beautiful. Yes, it is powerful. Yes, it is striking. Yes, it says a message. And it is well written, but it doesn't have that peaceful, flower-like, graceful beauty. I think this is more graceful than a lot of my poems. And he's also one of the most renowned American poets. And it's starting to crystallize in my head why. Because I'm now seeing a breadth to his work. And that's good. I wrote a poem this morning. Or no, I wrote a poem last night, really. It's kind of about, like, the addiction to art, to creation. Maybe something that we talked about in the first poem. The, friendly advice to a lot of young men and a lot of old men too. And also in Layover, work and art. And in part I wonder if Bukowski is slipping into my work. It's called influence, right? And I also don't really write happy poems ever. So it's interesting for me to really appreciate the simple, elegant poems. I guess that's probably why I appreciate them.